Alright then gang, so hopefully now you have some idea of what CSS is. I hope so anyway. And now we're going to take it one step further and we're going to talk about selectors a little bit more and classes and that kind of thing. So we kind of know what selectors already are. If we want to style something in CSS, we'd create a selector to target a certain thing. For example, if we want to target the p tags, then we would just simply write p, and that would be our selector. Then we'd write the declarations inside here. Now, what if we wanted to target one individual p tag? Well, this is not going to work because if we did this, then it's going to target every single p tag on the page, and I can demo that. I'm going to color all of these red and save it. Then we'll preview in the browser, and we can see that every paragraph tag now is red, okay? So what if we wanted to target just one paragraph tag in this div? And by the way, I already pre-made this HTML template. I hope you don't mind. It's just a div with several P's and also a couple of anchor tags at the bottom. Dead simple. But anyway, what if we wanted to style, for example, just this P tag? How would we do that? Well, we can use what's known as a class attribute in HTML, and that provides us with a hook for CSS to hook into that and use it as a selector so that we can style just that element with that class. So to do that, I could say class is equal to error, like so. And if I save this, then go over to the styles. If I want to target a class, then what I would do is instead of just saying p, which targets all the paragraph styles, I'd say dot and then the class name, which is error. So if we're targeting a class in a selector, then it starts with a dot. We always start with a dot when we're looking for a class or a period, however you like to call that thing. And then the class name, which is error in this case right here. So what this is going to do is say, okay, I'm going to select anything with this class and color that red. Now, since this is the only thing with that class, it's just going to style this one paragraph red. So save that and save your CSS and come over here, and we can see now just this one paragraph is now red. Awesome. So that's why we'd use classes, to kind of provide these hooks that we can reach into from our selectors and just grab certain things to style. Now, if we wanted to, we could add this same class over here to different things. For example, if I copy that and then below this div, I just create another div, and I'm going to give this a class attribute as well. I'll paste this in, and that is also going to have a class of error. Let me just write something terribly original in here. I am an error, and save it. Now, what do you think will happen? Well, over here, we're looking for the error class. Now we have two of those on the page. We have this one and this one. So this selector is going to hook into both of those or select both of those elements and style both of them. So if I save this and preview over here, we now see I am an error is also red as the paragraph is also red. So that's how we use classes. We can add the same class to many different elements on a page. And this would be good because you might have a class something like CTA button, which stands for call to action button. And with that class, you could add certain styles like the background color of the button, the font size, the text color, all that kind of stuff. And then you could apply that class to every button which was a call to action on your page, and they're all going to be styled the same then. So that is a fantastic time saver. It's really good to be able to do something like that. So we've seen classes now, but what if we now want to only get the P's with a class of error? So say we're not concerned about this down here. We want to style the error, but we only want to style any P tags which have that class. Well, what we do in this case is, first of all, we say the element selector, which is P, then dot error, and there's no space in between those. And we're saying, okay, we'll look for any P tags which have a class of error, like this. So now if I save this, only one P tag has the class of error, and this is not a P tag, so it doesn't style that. So let me preview, and now we can see this thing over here. Just that. This is no longer red. Alright then, so let's do another little example. I'm going to give this one now a class of success, so a different class now. And what I'm going to do is come over here and say p.success, so any P tags with a class of success, and I'm going to color those green. But what I'm actually going to do is just hover over this and get a better shade of green. So I'll get the hex code and then come up here. That looks like a better green. I'm going to save this, and we should see this one paragraph is now green. Awesome. Now, what if also we want to give this a class of success. Well, that should be green as well, right? Cool. And now what if I also give this a class of feedback? So this now has two classes. The first class, then a space, then the second class. We don't do another set of quotes. They all go in the same set of quotes. We're just giving this now multiple classes. So what if I now want to style all of the p tags which have both of these classes? Well, I can do that as well. We just chain them together, much like we have done here. I could say p.success.feedback. So now we're saying look for any p tag with a class of success with a class of feedback as well. It has to have both of these classes. So we're joining all of these things together. That's absolutely fine. And this time what we'll do is give this a border, and the border is going to be 1 pixel dashed, and it's also going to be this green color right here. So let me paste that dude and save it. Cross your fingers, and over here we can see that that has not worked because we've not saved the index. So let's save that, and now we can see this border right here. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a kind of alright understanding of classes and how we can use these classes to reach in and select elements from our HTML to style those. Now we've also seen in a past tutorial IDs. We looked at those when we looked at forms. Now IDs, I said at the time, can also be used in CSS, and they can be used in CSS as hooks just like classes can be, but they're more commonly used in JavaScript, and that's what I tend to use them for. But you can still use IDs as CSS hooks as well. So what I'm going to do is use that here just to show you, and then going forward I'm rarely going to be using IDs for CSS. So I'm going to say ID is equal to content, we'll call this. I'm going to save that, and then if I wanted to target an ID from a style sheet, all I need to do is say hash, which stands for the ID, then the ID name, which I said was content. That's what we called it right here. And then we just open up our curly braces and do our different declarations. So I'm going to say background color is going to be EB, EB, EB. I know that hex code, it's just a light gray. And then I'm going to say padding is going to be 20 pixels all the way around. So if I save this now, then we're going to see it's targeted that div with the ID of content, and it's applied those styles. Now, same again, if I wanted to make this more specific and say, okay, we'll just get the div with an ID of content, then I can just put the div in front of it, much like we put the P in front of the class, okay? So the one constraint that IDs have is that you can only use one ID of this name on each page, and not just this name. What I mean to say is all IDs must be unique, so I couldn't use content anywhere again as an ID on any other element. And if I called this something else, like something else, then I couldn't use this ID, something else, anywhere on any other element. They all have to be unique. So like I said before, I don't really use IDs for CSS hooks. I tend to stick with classes like this because they do the job for me. And I only really use IDs for JavaScript. But if you want to use IDs, there's nothing stopping you. You can certainly do that. It's just a style that I adopt. So then, another way to be more specific with what elements we want to style is by using what's known as descendant selectors. And this means that we can basically target children inside a parent element. So these are children right here inside a parent. They're nested inside of them. So if I wanted to target p tags, but only p tags nested inside a div like this, then I could do that with a descendant selector. Now, I know that these p tags are the only ones on the page, so there's no point in doing this. But for example, if I did another p tag down here, and by the way, to get some dummy content quite quickly, you can just type out lorem and tab, and that creates that lorem ipsum for us, some dummy content. But anyway, if I create this p tag, now if I want to target p tags but only ones inside a div, I can use a descendant selector to grab those and not this one down here. So the way this works is, first of all, we say the parent, and in fact I'm going to comment all of this, Control/out, so it doesn't have an effect. So we say the parent first of all in our selector, which is the div. That is the parent right here, yeah. Then the child. We have a space first of all, then the child, and then open up our curly braces. Then we do our declarations. So I might say in here something like color is going to be purple. Okay, save that, and notice now all of these are purple, but this one is not, because it's not inside a div. So that is a descendant selector. We say div, the parent goes on the left and the child on the right. And we could do this several layers deep. If there was something else in the p tag, like an A, we could target that as well. And then this would only target anchor tags inside a p tag, inside a div tag. Okay. Now we could get more specific. We could say we only want to target errors inside a div tag. Remember, we have this thing right here, and we have this thing down here as well. Now we're saying we only want to target the error class if it's inside a div. So if I save this and refresh, notice this is the only purple one right here. You can't really tell the difference that well, so I'm going to turn this to red instead. Save it and preview. Okay. Now notice the space right here between the div and the class of error. If we were to remove that space, we're now saying, okay, well, get the div with a class of error attached to it. And that would, in fact, get this thing down here, a div with a class of error. But by adding a space, we're saying this is a descendant selector. Look for the parent div, then get any class of error inside that div, any element with that class of error, and style that. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So the next way I'm going to show you how to select elements is by using what's known as attribute selectors. Now we've already seen what attributes are in HTML. Things like these are an attribute. The class, that's an attribute. This is an attribute, href. And any other kind of attribute that goes in here, we can use those as selectors. So say for example, I wanted to select an anchor tag, or every anchor tag on the page which had this attribute href, right? Doesn't matter what the value of the href was, it just had to have this href attribute. Then I could do that. So I could say, okay, let me comment this out first of all. I could say, find every anchor tag, then I use square brackets. This is to use an attribute selector. Then we put the attribute name inside these square brackets, which is just href. So that is going to look for every anchor tag with an href attribute. Now most will do so. Probably going to target 99%, if not more, of the anchor tags on your page. But I just wanted to demonstrate this. So I'm going to now say background color is going to be this hex code that I found before. It's a greeny color. So if I save this, then we should see that every anchor tag now that has an href attribute is colored this color in the background. Okay. So what if I wanted this particular attribute to equal something? For example, I wanted to style every single anchor tag on the page where the href is equal to this value right here, the netninja.co.uk. Well, I could do that. I'm going to copy this dude right here, then go to the styles, and then all we do is say equals, then quotes, and then paste it in right there. So now we're saying select every anchor tag with an href equal to this right here. So now we're going to give those a background color of this green. Not any other tag, just those with an href equal to this. So let me save it and preview. And now we can see only the first anchor tag is styled that way. Now if I was to just copy this and paste it down here as well, then it should style both of those because they both have this attribute. Save it and we can see that right here. Awesome. Now I'm just going to give these some extra styles just to make it look a bit better. So I'll say color is going to be white. That's the text color. And then we'll say text decoration is going to be none. That takes away the underline. And then I'm going to say the font weight is going to be bold. And then finally I'm going to say text transform. We've not seen this one yet, but what we can do is set it to uppercase like so. So if we save that and preview, now we can see anything with that href attribute, with that value, is going to be styled like this. Awesome. Okay then. So what if I wanted to shorten this? Because this is quite long. Well, I could use the asterisk in front of this equal sign. So I could say instead, if I wanted to, put an asterisk there, and then equals, and then we'll just say the Net Ninja, like this. And then what this says is, okay, any A with an href that includes the Net Ninja. So this is somewhere in the value of the href. That's what this asterisk means, that this is included in the value, then style this way. So hopefully this should still work. Let me save that and preview, and that works. Now I could do something similar. I could say A, and then href is going to be asterisk equal, which means it includes something, and I'm going to say Google. And if it includes Google, I'm going to color this white, give it a background of red, and also a border 2 pixels solid and blue. Okay, so anything that includes Google in the href now, which is an anchor tag, I want you to style this way. So save it, and now we can see this thing right here. Okay, now I can also, instead of using an asterisk, use a $. And what that $, means, okay, any href which ends with this. Now, nothing ends with this, so if I save it, nothing's going to get styled this way. But this thing right here ends in .com. So I could say ends in .com. I want you to style like this. So basically any anchor tag which ends in .com, or the href ends in .com. So if I save that and preview, then we can see it styles it again. So these attribute selectors are a good way to target elements with specific attributes that also have specific values. Remember, we can use equals to get an exact match. We can use asterisk equals to say it includes this somewhere in the value, or we can use this $ equals to say that this comes at the end of the value. So these are really useful for situations where you want to style certain different things with different attributes differently. An example of this could be any anchor tag that ends in .pdf, because that would be a PDF download. And if you have a PDF download, you might want to show a little PDF icon next to it, so you could style it that way. You could say find any anchor tag where the href ends in .pdf, and you could give that a background image to the right of a little icon of a PDF, and that would be a nice user experience to see that this is a PDF that they're downloading. So these kind of things can be really useful for all kinds of those situations. So then, my friends, you've heard me by now talk all about different types of selectors, rules, and all that jazz, and I'm sure you're getting quite bored. So I'm going to take a little sidestep for now and talk about selector specificity and also the cascade, which is the C in CSS. Now, I don't want to delve too deeply into this because this is a beginner's crash course, and we could end up going down a rabbit hole and getting deeper and deeper, which I don't want to do. But we will talk about the basics so that you understand this at surface level at least. So first of all, this cascade. Cascade as a word in itself means to pour downwards, like a waterfall cascades from top to bottom, right? Now the CSS cascade kind of takes this definition on when it comes to rules cascading from top to bottom. It's all about CSS properties flowing down from parents to children, and it encompasses really two different concepts: inheritance and specificity. So the first thing we need to understand to make this clear is that HTML elements can inherit CSS rules that are applied to their parent elements. So if we had code which looks something like this, for example, we have a div as the parent and then a paragraph nested inside it. If we had a CSS rule that looked like this, where it targeted the div, the parent, and colored it red, then this p tag would also inherit this property right there. So we'd see red inside this text. The text itself would be red rather. And this applies several layers deep. So if we had another tag inside their span, for example, then also that would inherit the great grandparent or whatever it is, you know, the parent style of this right here. And that would be colored red as well. So that is inheritance. We're basically inheriting what we style the parents as, and it's being passed down to the children. So child elements inherit CSS properties from parent elements, and that's called inheritance, but not all properties are inherited. Things like margin, padding, and background styles and borders, they are not inherited. It's mainly font and text styles or colors that are inherited. So let's have a quick look now at some examples. Okay, so now I want to take a look at this whole inheritance in action. So what I've done is commented out all of the rest of the CSS. So we've got pretty much a blank slate. The HTML is still the same over here, but it looks like this in a browser because we have no styles applied to it at the minute. So then, my friends, let us now try out this inheritance business. So I'm going to say div to target the divs on the page. Now look, we have this div right here and this div right here. So this one is a parent of all these paragraphs. Now if I was to say color, and then I'm going to say light coral. It's always nice to have an unusual colour. Save that. Now, because this is the parent and we have inheritance going on, all of the children right here, they are going to inherit this property. And you can already see over here on the right, we have all of these P's or paragraph tags. They are all coloured this coral colour. So it's inheriting that property now. Now, I did say that not all properties are inherited. It's mainly things to do with text, you know, like font weight or, you know, font family, font size. But if I now come in here and say border and set this to 1 pixel and solid and we'll say, you know, grey, I'm going to save that. Now, notice that is not inherited. Yeah, the div has this border because we're styling that explicitly right here, the div. But the p tags inside it, they are not getting a border each. No, it's just the one single parent div that has the border. Now then, if we also do another property, which is margin, and set that to be something pretty big so we can notice it, 40 pixels, then again, the div gets the margin around it, but these paragraph tags, they do not inherit the margin. However, if we now do something like font hyphen weight and then set this to be bold, let me try this out, save it. Now this is inherited. So again, another style to do with the text really, that is being inherited by these children. So then, imagine we want to, as a child of a parent, inherit something that isn't automatically inherited. Well, how would we do that? Pretty simply actually. We could come down here and say, okay, we have this p tag and now I want to inherit the values for the border and the margin. I might not necessarily know what they are. I don't want to write them out explicitly again. And I can just say border, inherit, like so, and margin, inherit. Okay, so what this is going to do, my friends, is look at the parent of whatever p tag we're currently styling. Now, in these cases, this is the parent. And if we have a style for the border and the margin added to the parent, then it's going to inherit the values from those because we said inherit them right here. So that's going to apply in the case of these p tags right here because this is styled with a margin and border. But this p tag, the parent of this is the body tag, I suppose. So that is not going to inherit any of those styles because the body is not styled with the margin or the border. So only these things are going to inherit it. So if we save that now and preview, we can see now we have a border around each paragraph tag and also that margin. So that's nice. We can inherit things if we want to, even though they're not directly inherited for us. Okay, so we have this idea of inheritance and, you know, the p tag can inherit whatever is specified right here. And in the case of the color and the font weight, it's doing that automatically. Now, what if I wanted to override the color? So maybe I don't want these p tags to be light coral. I want it to be something else. Well, I can simply just say color and set that to crimson and save it. And now we're going to see crimson text. And that's because this is a more specific selector. We're styling the parent. And if we had any kind of text directly in the parent, not in a p tag, then that would still be light coral, as we can see right there. But because now we have a more specific selector for these paragraph styles, it's overriding the color value. This one is essentially more specific than this one. You know, we're just styling the parent here. We're actually styling the element itself right here. So this brings into the equation the idea of specificity as well. And we can override inheritance. So then now what if I later on down the CSS file somewhere else, I add another style for the paragraph tag. So I use the same selector, probably shouldn't do this, but this time I say color is orange. Well, what's going to take precedence then? Well, it works from top to bottom. So whatever is declared last or further down in the style sheet, that takes precedence. So even though these two are the same selectors, when there's a conflict like this, the one that is further down takes precedence. So now it should be orange and we can see that right here. Okay, but if we're talking about specificity, I could make a more specific selector. For example, I could say div and then space then p. This is a descendant selector, remember, and this is more specific than this. I know that might seem weird because we're targeting exactly the same thing, but because we're saying, okay, we'll get all the p's inside a div, this now is a more specific selector. It carries more weight than this. And even though this comes further down in the style sheet, this is now still going to take precedence because the specificity is higher, if you like. It's more weighty. So if I save it now, we should see crimson instead. Okay, so now we can see crimson. So I know this idea of inheritance and specificity is probably going to be quite a lot to get your head around, and you might find yourself playing around with this a little bit. And by the way, I would implore you to do so, because the only way to learn something properly is to test and test and test things yourself. But also what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you a link to a really good article, or guide rather, on the Mozilla website all about selector specificity. So I would advise you to read that if you want to understand more about this, because there are many times as a developer you might be creating CSS rules and you've got some inheritance going on, and because your style sheets are so big and so many lines long, then it can get a bit messy and you're not sure what elements are inheriting from what and what selectors are more specific than another, and it can get a little bit confusing. So definitely check out that article. The link is going to be down below. But hopefully now you have kind of this rough idea of specificity and inheritance, and together they kind of make up the cascade in CSS, and that's what it's all about.